teeth with implants, the denture experts strive to have a solution for you with their digital technology. Information and appointments at thedentureexperts.com or 480-275-6284.
Hospice of the Valley, medical, social, and spiritual care for patients nearing end of life and support for their families. A not-for-profit community hospice, HOV.org.
From the Cronkite Studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
A united front to fight the opioid epidemic. Hear from DEA officials on the battle against prescription painkiller abuse.
Plus, Scottsdale students and teachers take to the streets over school administration and staffing.
Plus, fiery testimony about Trump's budget cuts to tribal schools in our state.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Troy Lynch.
And I'm Adriana de Alba. Thank you for joining us.
There's good and bad news in Arizona's fight against the opioid epidemic. Results were shared this morning at the second annual Opioid Crisis at Summit in Tempe. Cronkite reporter Mari Nelson was there to show us where Arizona stands with this epidemic.
Although progress has been made to defeat this opioid epidemic, the DEA says the problem is going to get worse before it gets better, and there is not just one party to blame.
If you want to point the finger, turn it around and point it at yourself. All right, every single one of us in this room is partially responsible for what's happening right now.
Doug Coleman, special agent in charge of the Phoenix DEA, spoke at the second annual Arizona Opioid Crisis Summit to address the real roots of this epidemic.
Doctors started prescribing, Big Pharma started producing them, the Mexican cartel started manufacturing heroin and fentanyls.
All of these things came together to produce the opioid crisis, which has already caused more deaths nationally than car accidents.
So why aren't we taking it more seriously?
According to the DEA, 2 people die each day in Arizona due to the opioid epidemic. The Arizona Department of Health data shows us that there have been 5,800 possible opioid overdoses reported within the last 8 months. 15% of those were fatal.
Unfortunately, it looks like the problem is getting worse before it gets better.
Senior research analyst for the Justice Research and Statistics Association, Shanna Malone, shows a graph of 3 different kinds of opioids that show the steady increase of heroin deaths from 2007 to 2016.
If we don't double down and do something different now, that number's going to cross that red line of prescription opioids. It's only a matter of time.
The Arizona Opioid Crisis Summit is a chance for professionals from all fields to come together and work on a plan of action.
The problem has to be solved by all of us. The cops can't solve it by themselves. Treatment can't solve it by itself. Prevention can't solve it by itself. The medical practitioners can't. We all have to work together, and that's why these kind of conferences are important.
In Phoenix, Mari Nelson, Cronkite News.
Coleman hopes that the organizations there can make enough progress fighting the epidemic that there won't be a need to have an event next year. Cronkite News is dedicated to covering the opioid crisis. You can watch our documentary Hooked RX From Prescription to Addiction and find resources for getting help online at hookedrx.org. Mari Nelson, Cronkite News.
Governor Doug Ducey is claiming success in doing away with state regulations that just don't make sense anymore. Ducey held a news conference today to talk about the results of his regulation rollback campaign. It's a strategic step in the governor's attempt to draw new businesses to the state by ensuring old regulations aren't holding back new entrepreneurial opportunities. Ducey's office said that efforts to eliminate 676 regulations saved more than $48 million this past year, and that the rollbacks need to continue, thus by reissuing a moratorium this week on new rulemaking.
Agencies that want to go through and put forward a new rule for review have to go through a stricter process. They have to get an exemption from the governor's office, and they have to meet certain standards that rule applies to, specifically as it relates to protecting public health and safety.
Ducey says some of his top rollbacks include reducing regulatory costs on transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft, allowing communities to use recycled water during water shortages, and making it easier for people who have issues with state agency rules to petition the governor's regulatory review Council to look into the matter.
Coronado High School in Scottsdale became a battleground last night as parents, teachers, and students called for change within the Scottsdale Unified School District. Reporter Sydney Eisenberg introduces us to one student who says the district is setting her up to fail before she walks this May.
It's definitely affecting my grades right now. I'm not home studying for my stats test that I have tomorrow. I'm here trying to advocate to make sure my teachers can run their own stats classrooms without having interference from administration.
Natalia Perez is a senior at Chaparral High School and one of 23,000 students in the Scottsdale Unified School District. She and others took to the Scottsdale streets last night to push for change.
Protesters gathered right outside of Coronado High School to call for new leadership for the Scottsdale Unified School District.
I know how hard the teachers worked at this school and in this district. We need a little support from the board and especially from the superintendent.
Opponents say that Superintendent Dr. Denise Birdwell and her administration have disrespected teachers by not allowing them the rights given to them through the SUSD's Teacher Employment Agreement, which was created back in 2013.
They're ignoring it, and they're sort of cherry picking occasionally if they want something. They're doing it that way.
Just 4 miles away is another site of distrust in the school district.
A lot of the tension is centered here at Hopi Elementary, where parents and teachers say that construction on the school has been anything but transparent.
The Arizona Attorney General is investigating how the district procured the funds for the renovations. SUSD Board President Barbara Perleberg read a statement that said, in part,
"Our job is to take all of these voices and weigh them together as we try to make the best, most informed decisions we can for our students."
Back at Coronado High School, Perez says the issues are a distraction from what her goals should be as a senior.
So I've loved to think about prom. I'm also right now applying to many scholarships to be able to pay to go out of state. And right now, where I could be writing essays or spending time on that, I'm having to be here and advocating for my own teachers.
In Scottsdale, Sydney Eisenberg, Cronkite News.
The Arizona Supreme Court is reconsidering allowing Dreamers to pay the same in-state tuition as Arizona residents. Appeals were unsuccessful and overturned in court last June. The justices want to hear from Maricopa County Community College District and Attorney General Mark Brnovich. The justices' ruling will also affect the policy of the Board of Regents. Currently, they allow DACA recipients to pay in-state tuition if they meet Arizona residency requirements.
Meanwhile, the next 48 hours is make or break time for a deal in the U.S. Senate on immigration reform.
This is the compromise, but I do think that it'll get support of almost everybody in there.
Arizona Senator Jeff Flake is optimistic about an immigration bill being finalized by a bipartisan group known as the Common Sense Coalition. But as now, the proposal would only include funding for border security and what Republican backers call fair treatment for 1.8 million immigrants and DACA recipients.
Tribal schools have long been troubled, but the director of the Bureau of Indian Education told a congressional committee today that things will improve, even with funding cuts in the Trump administration's proposed budget. Not all lawmakers were buying that pitch, as Cronkite News reporter Ariana Bustos explains from our Washington bureau.
Congressman Raul Grijalva's description of the BIE director Tony Dearman's testimony was blunt. He called it pretty naive.
For him to say that I'm excited about the fact that Trump cut our budget by 16%, to me made no sense.
Grijalva said more cuts will only make a bad situation worse.
We have a $1.3 billion backlog of repairs, of schools that aren't even connected to the internet and don't have access to the internet, and you also have the situation where they're in disrepair.
But Congressman Todd Rokita said the problem isn't the money, but how that money is being used. The Indiana Republican agreed with Dearman that everyone has to live within their budget. While he respects tribal sovereignty, Rokita says the federal government shouldn't be afraid to step in and offer support to tribes.
A lot of tribal communities absolutely want that, and I think they should have it. Then I find some tribal communities, frankly, we won't name names or anything like that, but I'd say no. This is the federal government's role, their responsibility, and regardless of the quality of the education, BIEs to do the job.
Dearman said in his testimony that tribes can and should have total control of their funds. But Grijalva says the government can both respect tribal sovereignty and support them financially.
Self-determination and sovereignty does not mean that the federal government's support in terms of resources and money disappears with that decision. If a tribe decides to be the primary person to run and administer the schools, I think the support that comes from the federal government to those schools has to continue.
Reporting from Washington, Ariana Bustos, Cronkite News.
The Arizona legislature is being asked to exempt coal used in a power plant on the Navajo Nation from the state's sale tax. The goal is to make the plant more attractive for a potential buyer. The Navajo generating station in Page is set to close at the end of 2019 unless a new owner can be found. The company that owns the coal mine that supplies the plant is pushing that tax exemption. It was approved by a House committee. On a 6-3 vote today, the tax cut would cost about $35 million in state revenue. There's a new bill in the Arizona legislature aimed at curbing excessive salaries for public employees. HB 2273 would cap the annual salary and benefits package for public employees at 4 times the median family income. Last year, it was reported that more than 1,200 public employees in Maricopa County alone made more than $100,000 per year. Pima County and the city of Phoenix have recently sent requests for salary increases.
Phoenix is attempting a creative way to solve the $4.4 billion pension debt. That money is owed to Phoenix's retirees. The new plan could decrease the debt by $10 million over 20 years. The city is testing a new action in the wastewater department that will allow it to pay off a portion of that debt early. Therefore, it would eliminate interest it would pay over time. Hurricane Maria had a lasting effect on Puerto Rico, and cleanup efforts are still underway.
Coming up on Cronkite News, how an Arizona utility company is helping out with the recovery.
I'm Judy Woodruff, anchor and managing editor of the PBS NewsHour. The journalists of tomorrow face a fast-changing media landscape, but quality news remains vitally important to our communities, our country, and our world. At ASU's Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication, students learn solid, reliable reporting, holding the powerful accountable, and rebuilding the public's trust. The Cronkite School and Arizona PBS, preparing the next generation for a stronger future of journalism.
As journalists at Cronkite News, we report on stories that matter to you by focusing on the local impact. We dig deeper and work tirelessly to keep you informed.
Live in Wickerburg.
Live in Los Angeles. In Cleveland.
In Washington. In Louisville.
From Jerusalem. Live in Philadelphia. From around the world to right here in Phoenix.
At Cronkite News, we report the facts and stick to the truth.
I'm Ted Simons, host and managing editor of Arizona Horizon. Join us each weekday at 5:30 and 10 as we bring you the top newsmakers who impact the state. We cover the stories in depth that shape and affect our local communities, and we take the time to ensure that all voices are equally heard. For more than 30 years, Arizona Horizon has been your voice and your source for what matters most, right here on Arizona PBS.
The suspect involved in a school shooting today at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, has been identified as 18-year-old Nicholas Cruz. The teen was a former student at the South Florida High School. Cruz was arrested without incident off of school grounds. Law enforcement officials say there are 16 fatalities, but are unclear how many others were wounded. The sheriff's department also says the shooter was inside and outside the school during the incident. Several SWAT teams have entered the school to clear every building to make sure no further threat remains.
The damage of Hurricane Maria has left parts of Puerto Rico in the dark for months on end. The rigorous effort to turn the lights back on has prompted companies to lend their fellow Americans a helping hand, one of them from right here in the Valley. We had the chance to catch up with employees at Salt River Project to hear about their experiences working in Puerto Rico.
The return of electricity in the Carolina region of Puerto Rico sparks an eruption of cheers from its vulnerable citizens. They've been without power since Hurricane Maria ripped through the island last September.
That quick little snapshot of a moment is really what we were there to do.
SRP joined other utility companies from around the U.S. to help Puerto Rico, spending 30 days distributing materials to restore power on the northeast part of the island in Carolina, Fajardo, and Canóvanas.
I was overwhelmed at first. It was, wow, was my first reaction. I've never seen so much destruction.
There they come. Rodriguez and his team returned to the valley last week and say they were up against major challenges along the way. Rain, bad weather, and mountainous terrain makes restoring power on the island a difficult task. But the end result they describe was an emotional experience shared between them and the people of Puerto Rico.
They were so happy, cheering in the streets, hugging, offering to cook us meals.
We gave them the light, and that's what we heard over and over from people in the field, is that thank you for bringing the light back to us.
Because of the work of SRP and other utility companies, by the time they left, more than 50% of electricity had been restored, leaving Puerto Rico better than they found it.
We went there for the people. This was an opportunity that my company allowed me to be able to help the greater good.
Of 2 days ago, the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority, known as PREPA, reported more than 75% of customers, that's about 1.1 million people on the island, now have electricity restored. But that still leaves nearly 400,000 people living on the island without power.
Textile recycling may not be as popular as glass and paper recycling. Coming up on Cronkite News, see how this industry might have a chance for growth, but this is just the beginning.
And is the rain going to stick around for your Valentine's Day dinner plans? Stay tuned.
Hello from the children of planet Earth.
Exploring, it's the lifeblood of the mission.
Human beings are a curious bunch.
What are we going to see when we get really close?
Just because an idea is crazy, it's not necessarily wrong.
We were on our way.
You don't get anywhere until you've tested the limits.
That carries an intensity you can't imagine.
You could hear people just, whoa.
Oh my God, absolutely spectacular.
It's a rush.
We ask a lot of our heroes.
We are at a remarkable moment.
We're going farther than any exploration ever has.
By the year 2050, there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish. Before Professor Halden, I had an insane amount of passion, but I almost felt helpless because I didn't know how to use it. Professor Halden gave me a chance to make a difference. Being at a place like ASU allows you to take these big leaps. Ultimately, the biggest problems in the world cannot be solved alone.
You may see bins around the valley asking you to recycle old clothes. One company is responsible for 175 of those drop-off bins. Reporter Tim Johns was in South Chandler to show us how they're giving things like old jeans a new life.
On any given day, the steady hum of machines can be heard here at Bonded Logic, a company that converts recycled denim into things such as insulation for homes and fiber for bedding. Todd Keene, co-founder of Bonded Logic, says that his business serves a wider purpose.
It's important to recycle textiles, obviously, because there's only a limited amount of landfill space and carbon footprint's very large, and especially large metropolitan areas. So any little bit we do, including textiles, is going to make a difference.
According to the EPA, only about 15% of unwanted clothing and textiles ends up getting recycled, just like this here. About 21 billion pounds ends up in landfills each and every year. Edward Kezavangian is a professor at the Julie Ann Wrigley Global Institute of Sustainability at Arizona State University. Kezavangian believes one of the reasons why the textile recycling business has been slow to catch on is because there's not a big enough demand for it yet.
There's no incentive for communities to set up textile recycling programs.
I mean, if your local community didn't have a bottle recycling program or didn't have a newspaper recycling program, I think most consumers probably wouldn't bother to recycle.
But despite the market's small size at present, Keene believes that the industry and its products have room to grow.
As we develop new technologies and new products to meet specific customer needs, we feel the growth curve is just the beginning right now for these products.
A business making the world more green, one blue pair at a time. In Chandler, Tim Johns, Cronkite News.
Bonded Logic's products are currently used in Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport and by food delivery service Freshly.
Well, hopefully our rainy skies aren't a damper on your romantic Valentine's Day plans for this evening. But we have Nicole Randock checking our forecast. Nicole, is it going to be cold the next couple of days?
That's right, Troy and Adriana. It's finally starting to feel like winter across the state. This beautiful photograph was taken by Arizona Snow Bowl Ski Resort, where they have received 9 inches of fresh powder since the beginning of this week. And we're expecting snowfall to accumulate above 7,000 feet along the rim and in the high country tonight going into tomorrow. I mean, look at that beautiful powder. Unfortunately, though, this weather system isn't going to be bringing a huge accumulation of snow. We're looking at about 5 inches of snow in the White Mountains and about 2 to 3 inches of snow in Flagstaff. And all of this is due to a low pressure system that we have been tracking off the coast of California that has moved into our state today, bringing with it moisture from the south. And the widespread showers started in the valley around 2:30 p.m. this afternoon, and they will continue later on into this evening. And what exactly does Cupid have in store for us tonight? Well, it looks like come 8 p.m. here in the valley, we will be in the upper 50s to low 60s. And if you have your dinner plans outside on the patio, you are going to want to move those indoors because the rain chances will continue. This rain is bringing with it cooler temperatures. We're looking at a high of 67 degrees with a % chance of rain tomorrow, but then sunny skies and warmer temperatures are back in the forecast going into this weekend. And come President's Day, we're looking at a high of 75 degrees with no chance of rain in sight. Reporting for the Cronkite Weather Team, I'm Nicole Randock.
Thank you, Nicole. With the world watching top athletes at the Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang, Special Olympians are gearing up for their turn in the spotlight.
Coming up next on Cronkite News, we'll take you to a standout high school baseball player from the Valley, now trying to help support Arizonans in the Special Olympics.
Cronkite News weeknights at 5 on Arizona PBS.
Fridays, it's at Cronkite News, your social sharing connection where you choose the news. Facebook likes and shares, tweets, retweets, and favorites. YouTube views and subscriptions. We're watching you watch us. From our digital home at cronkitenews.azpbs.org to your television, web browser, or mobile device. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Then join us for at Cronkite News, our weekly refresh, each Friday at 5 on Arizona PBS.
Some Special Olympians from Arizona and their supporters are making their rounds of congressional offices in Washington today. It's a part of a national effort to lobby for better health access for Americans with disabilities. Reporter Shelby Lindsay met with some standout Arizona athletes supporting the cause.
Dustin Swinson is not afraid of a challenge. The unified sports athlete competes in bowling and soccer at Verrado High School. His latest challenge is coming to Washington, D.C. this week to lobby for money to support the Special Olympics programs.
It's for the little kids who may have disabilities, just like I do.
Swinson and other athletes are here to urge Congress to continue its support in the 2019 budget. Their goal is to improve health access for 5 million Americans with intellectual disabilities. Laura Duncan, an Arizona Special Olympics employee, said the Healthy Athletes program makes a huge impact in the state.
Arizona serves 25,000 athletes statewide, and all 25 of those athletes have access to health care through the Healthy Athletes program.
Kyle Wellman, a Unified Sports partner for the Special Olympics at Verrado High School, shared what they do to bring students together.
What Unified Sports does is we take a partner, which is a kid without special needs, and then partner them with an athlete who is somebody with an intellectual disability or physical disability.
Kyle is passionate about the program and had a message.
I've been able to go into my school and meet some really, really incredible kids that I wouldn't have met anyways. It's not a pity thing. It's not I'm volunteering. These are my friends. These are people that I care about, and that I think it's important that everybody understands how important the inclusion part of it is.
As the largest healthcare provider for individuals with intellectual disabilities, the Special Olympics said government support is crucial in order to provide these opportunities.
To help us fund for the Special Olympics so we could keep the whole program going. As it continues to help disability kids in the future and to help their families too.
In Washington, Shelby Lindsay, Cronkite News.
Valentine's Day isn't the only thing people are celebrating here in Arizona today. It's Arizona Statehood Day. On this day 106 years ago, Arizona became the 48th member of the United States. The state now has the 15th highest population in the U.S., home to 6.7 million residents. Some other things that happened back in Arizona's birth year of 1912, the Titanic sank, the grocery bag was invented, and Woodrow Wilson became the 28th president of the United States. That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thanks for joining us.
For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.
Thousand men trapped, desperate, exposed. How did the Allies survive Dunkirk?
It was absolute genius.
Courage and science change history. The Great Escape at Dunkirk on Nova.
Tonight at 8 on Arizona PBS. Explore new ideas and new worlds here on Arizona PBS, a community service of Arizona State University.
The easiest and best way to support Arizona PBS is by becoming a sustaining member. Your monthly contribution of $5 or more comes directly from your bank account or credit card, so you know your membership is always current. It also means no